Hello, everyone. We are the Gratitude Girls.
The Gratitude Girls are in the house. Hello to our audience. Hi, Laurie. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm really excited to be here tonight. There's such a funny story about the things that happen before we go live and the things that really make this show so unique. This is almost like Groundhog's Day, right? Last month, I
Right.
called Lois a month early. When you really want someone and you call them a month early, that's giving them a message. It's like you really want to talk to them. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I showed up on the wrong day," or "Am I a few minutes late?" I was a month early. That's that's how excited I was to speak to Lois. I remember when we had this conversation. So before we get started, maybe I'll introduce myself to the audience who is brand new to us. I'm live streaming to you tonight from Niagara on the Lake, beautiful Niagara on the Lake, Ontario, Canada. My name is Catherine Asauer Myers, and you can call me Rara. I'm here with my awesome partner, Laurie Delcradecki.
And I am outside of Nashville, Tennessee.
Laurie and I were hugging and locking elbows just this month earlier. I guess it was 17 days ago. Is it possible?
Yeah, about that.
17 days ago, we were in the same city, in the same house. We were here in Niagara on the Lake, and it was really quite a moment, because although the show is about our guest tonight, what I do want to say is it's about gratitude. And I am so grateful, Laurie, that you came all that way to be here with us. And I'll let you talk about why you came, but I'm just happy you did.
Yes. Well, the Gratitude Girls had our very first in person Ontario, and we had several women there, and it was so wonderful.
Yes, thank you. Your audio just sort of glitched a little bit there. So it was our first live in Ontario retreat, and we had fun, we had photos, we had energy, we had Bowen, we had two guests, keynote speakers who came. One was Carolyn Jackson, one was Rhonda Moffat, and our guests who attended are still talking to us. No, they're still talking about it. We did some really great work. It was awesome work. We're still vibing from it because it was only 17 days ago. So thank you for coming here. And I'm really looking forward to the next one, because I feel like there's a sequel to what we started. I feel like it was part one, that you go to something and you're like, wow, that was great, but that was the beginning. So yeah, we'll have to look at what that's like for you to come here. So Laurie, there are people who are watching for the first time and they're wondering, like, what are you guys doing? What are you girls doing? What are you, she, her, them, they, what are we doing here talking about the Gratitude Girls? Should we tell our audience a little bit about how this got started so many years ago?
Sure, yeah. So Catherine and I are both in a direct sales company called Send Out Cards. And so we teach people how to keep in touch with their clients, their customers, as well as their friends and family. And in our company at our international convention, they always have a theme for each year, and then they give an award away based on that theme. So 2013, the award was gratitude, or the theme was gratitude. And so our CEO gets up on stage and he gives all the attributes and accolades of the different people, the person that's going to win the award, and then he calls their name. And so he called Catherine, and I was in the back doing all my techie stuff, taking pictures and taking video. And then he said, for the very first time ever, we have a tie. And so then he starts telling about the other person, and then he calls my name. So Catherine and I actually met on stage in front of thousands of people. And it was just like one of those things that, when you see someone and, like in dating, they always say like love at first sight or whatever. But, you know, when you see someone, you know that there's something destined for you to do together. And Catherine and I knew that. We both felt like there's not just coincidences. And literally within like 2 minutes, Gratitude Girls was born.
You know, it's amazing because in 2008, I moved to Ontario. In 2009, I joined Send Out Cards. And a few years later, we met on stage. And maybe you've moved once or twice before, because Lois is going to talk to us about, moving and what that's like in your life. And when I moved, I really reinvented myself, right down to the name, branding. The very first words our first grandson ever said was rah-rah. And after going to a branding coach, I knew that that was meant for me. And when I met you, Laurie, on stage, I remember my knees were still shaking. I knew that was meant for us to meet one another, because Laurie is too humble to tell you this, but she won an award, a huge recognition in our company for giving the most gifts. So what does Laurie do 5 minutes after she meets me? She gives me a gift. So Laurie had given the most gifts. And when I heard that, I thought, what would it be like to receive a gift from Laurie? And there I go, and I meet her on stage. And I remember when we walked off stage and we grabbed hands together and we were walking down, and I thought, this is special. And it took us, it was timeless. It was seamless for us to see our future together and to know that we're here and visiting. And we said, we're going to travel the world, and we're going to travel the world together. And we're going to meet people from all over the world, and we're going to help them share their stories, assist, aid, stage, whatever that is. And tonight is no exception, because I'd like to take the moment now to segue into our special guest. So stay with us, get a glass of water, a cup of tea, cup of coffee, or grab your dinner and get ready to learn something about money and mortgages tonight. Our guest is Lois Volk. She's a mortgage broker with over 35 years experience in the GTA. We are in Ontario, Canada. Lois provides professional, confidential service and expert mortgage advice to clients who are purchasing new properties or refinancing. She'll explain what that means if that's a new term to you. Lois's areas of specialization include first-time buyers. That's awesome for the first-time buyers. Pre-approvals, rental properties, self-employed borrowers, new immigrants, poor debt, debt consolidation, and reverse mortgages. Those are some fancy terms that Lois is going to talk to us about. She enjoys working with her clients to understand their mortgage needs and to find them the best financing solutions. I feel like it's a bridal shop. I'm going in, I'm looking for a dress. There are dresses all over the place, but there's one and only one, because when that bride says, that's the dress, I feel like that's what somebody says when they're with Lois. And they find the solution and they say, that's the solution for me. So Lois, thank you so much for being here. Please share with us where you're speaking to us from tonight. What part of the world?
I'm in East York, Toronto. So I'm
Awesome.
about a 15-minute drive from downtown Toronto.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. So Lois, you're 35 years dedicated to this business. A quick question. How did you get into the mortgage business?
Well, I actually have a master's degree in history from the University of Regina, which is in Saskatchewan, where I grew up. I worked for a few years with the government in Saskatchewan, the provincial government. And then my partner at the time transferred to London, England, who was an accountant. And I worked there with one of the municipal councils for a couple of years. And all through my work with any sort of government, I just couldn't figure out why they were paying me to do what I was doing. I wasn't enjoying it at all. So when finally came back to Toronto a few years later, I wanted to do something where I was my own boss and where my work would be I feel justified in doing what I did, helping people and making money at it. And the more I worked, the more money I could make. So it's worked out well for me. I've met lots of very interesting people, and it's challenging on both sides, on the lender side and on the borrower side.
Now, Lois, having been in real estate myself when I was in my 20s, probably one of the most stressful decisions someone can make is going through a construction, building a house. We have some experts in the room here. Renovating a house. We have some experts in the room here. Financing, refinancing, purchasing material, putting an evaluation on something that doesn't exist yet. Those are stressful decisions for people to make. And we can all give you our story on what that was like for us. And I'll just open it by going around the room. We once did a 4.5-year renovation.
Ooh.
You can just imagine what that was like. Laurie, you're an expert at renovations, right?
Yes, we definitely didn't take that long. It was only 14 months, but we took it down to the brick and
Right.
bought every piece of anything that went in the house ourselves.
Right. Yeah, we did the same thing for 4.5 years. And you feel like you just built and designed something, and then somebody else wants it and you sell it. So Lois, you deal with people who want something that belongs to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. I
Someone
don't usually
says,
think of it that way, but yes, that's true.
okay, and someone says, I'm willing to give this for a price and move on. And then the war begins. So what do you see in your business when it comes to the left brain saying, how much is it? Here's the money. And the right brain going, but I want that too. And I want that. You're laughing. Share some stories with us.
Well, part of the problem with the Toronto market of late particularly is houses are in such short supply, and the purchaser really can't be very fussy. If they want a house, they sort of have to take what they can get, but they also have to reconcile that they may have work to do afterwards, which has to be taken into consideration with the financing. And each case is different.
So when you look back at the real estate and the mortgage, maybe somebody's tuning in from somewhere across the world, and maybe they've always had different market trends. Can you share, what do you think in Toronto? Like, what were the good old years? What were the years that you could remember it being relatively smooth sailing when it came to buying and selling and mortgages?
Oh, there weren't many real smooth sailing times in Toronto. Early in my career, I started in the late 80s when mortgage rates were incredibly high, which was really challenging for purchasers in those days. And then rates eventually settled down, but prices also dropped off in the early 90s. So it slowed the market then too. People just became much more cautious. And then into the late 90s, it started to move along fairly well through the early 2000s, not too badly. And then we hit COVID. During COVID, prices went crazy, and it's been insane since. Like, property values of an average home in Toronto is at least 3 times what it was in about 2001. So it's there isn't a lot of normal in Toronto.
Yeah. So, how does a first-time home buyer who has a regular job buy a house that's tripled in value?
Oh, it's tough. I really feel for the young people. And most of them are getting serious contributions from their parents or inheritances.
So tell me, does that lead us to reverse mortgages?
Reverse mortgages are geared to people 55 years and older. And they
Who are
have to
giving
have
their
existing.
children large, substantial down payments?
Yeah, and sometimes people will do a reverse mortgage to give their children money. And everybody's situation is different. You have to evaluate how much they're going to need for their own future lifestyle and how much they can give their children. I feel for my children. Like, it's not easy to get into the market, and right now rates are very high too. So
So if for people who are listening right now, we talk about 3 times the value and rates are high. Can we talk a little bit about some statistics in case somebody's watching and they're like, what's high? What's 3 times the value? What's the rate? Can we talk about that? Are we allowed to quote average sale prices in Toronto over the last 6 months without being specific?
Yeah, real estate agent could give you a better idea, but I'll say, for example, a house like mine, when I bought it in, well, this is going back to, I bought it 11 years ago. And it is more than 3 times the value now. Which, like, if I was doing it again, I could not buy this house. And it's
Right.
basically a 3-bedroom, 2-story house. With a finished basement and a family room on the back.
Right. So that means that there's a lot of equity for people who bought their homes 10 or 11 years
Yes,
ago.
that's one thing
So if
too.
you paid 400,000 for the house, I'm just picking that. Now it's worth
Mhm.
1.2.
Mhm,
So that means you have $800,000 in equity if you paid the house outright.
mhm. But then the thing is, do I want to sell it?
Right, but you have equity in the house that you can actually take out and borrow against it and renovate it or do all kinds of things, right?
Mhm,
So when the values of properties triple, you either take the money and go somewhere, like you said, where, or you leave it sit in the house, or you use the money. So what's the mortgage business about? Like, we know that you buy a house, you go to a mortgage broker, but really, what is it about? Tell us the ins and outs of mortgages for those, maybe some people have never been to a mortgage broker. They don't know what that means.
Well, as a mortgage broker, I have access to many banks, trust companies, finance companies, private lenders. So everybody's mortgage needs are different, and somebody may want to pay their mortgage off quickly. Somebody may want just the cheapest payment possible. So you have to weigh each person's desires, and if somebody wants to be able to do a lot of work on the property, you've got to give them a mortgage that allows them to take extra money out without penalizing them. And then you get on the other side, if somebody's looking at investing and they want to buy some rental properties, that's a totally different strategy for the lenders as well.
So
And
you're
throughout the business, I
basically,
have to respect the lenders. I have to make sure that I'm giving them good product so that they can continue to give me good service too.
so you're basically a person who has access to money, but not just from one source.
Right.
For those who are not understanding or don't know what a mortgage broker is. So someone can go to a bank, bank ABC, or they can go to you and you can go to all the banks and all the private lenders that you have access to. And you can basically, it's like going shopping. You can go
Yes,
shopping for
exactly.
the lender. Okay.
Right. And we deal with so many different lenders. Sometimes we get special rates because particularly if we send large volumes to certain lenders, they will give us better rates. And then of course there are people that don't necessarily qualify at the A banks, have credit problems or low income, or are self-employed. There are other sources of financing for them. And then it's a matter of counseling these people, making sure they're aware of what they're getting into and why do you have to pay higher rates? Why do you have to pay some fees? So it's presenting a good image of what you're selling, and also you have to do the same to the lenders, make sure the lenders get the right information.
So before I pass the mic over to Laurie, what are the interest rates these days?
5-year mortgage is about 6%, give or take.
Okay, so someone watching the show can actually have some statistics on what that's like in Ontario. If they want to move to Ontario and look for a house, they can expect the average mortgage rate to be 6%, right?
That's for 5-year rate. And, not everybody wants a 5-year rate right now because there's a strong feeling that rates will go down. And the short-term rates are higher. Looking at 1-year rate is about 6.8, 6.9.
Right, there are choices to be made and decisions to.
And this is compared to 5-year rates of less than 2% a year and a half ago. So
Yes. There is some good counseling there. There's room for some good coaching. That's where Laurie and I come in. Laurie, do you have any questions for Lois?
Well, first, I've never heard of a 5-year mortgage. Here in the States, most people get at least 10 years but it's usually 15 or 30-year
Mhm.
rates. But so that's interesting. I don't know that I could imagine paying for $1 million house in 5 years.
Well, that's it. You know, we have a different term in amortization, whereas in the States, a lot of them have the same term in amortization. But the 5-year term is sort of, it's the most popular, and particularly with first time buyers, because for at least 5 years, they know what their payments are going to be. But then you don't know what it's going to be in 5 years, and that's always challenging. But there are 10-year mortgages, but the rates tend to be high enough that most people will go with the 5-year or shorter.
So let me interject because I hear a gap. In the States, when someone buys a house, they're buying a house with the mortgage for the term that they're expecting to pay it off. What's happening here, Laurie, is this is a short-term mortgage that's renewed, that will be renewed, or you'll have to go back into the market. So it's based on, for 5 years, your payments. So let's say you borrow $1 million, and at 6% amortized, you'll get the rate for 5 years. In 5 years, you won't pay the house off based on that. You could, but if you don't, in 5 years, you'll go get another mortgage. Or you'll sell the house. It's not based on 25 years, because I bought my first house and I remember thinking, well, in 20 years, I'll be this old and the house will be paid off. And you didn't switch. Here you go mortgage shopping. Here you can leave in the middle of a mortgage, prepay it, and go somewhere else. It's like going contractor shopping. It's like going kitchen cabinet shopping. You say, I found a better rate. So I just wanted to explain that because it's different in the States, Lois. You know, we take for granted what we do here, but it's not the same everywhere. So when we have a global audience, right, they may be wondering.
I have family in the States too, and I'm aware that it's the mortgage terms are usually much longer.
Right? Yeah. So it feels like, how would you pay $1 million house off in 5 years? Oh my goodness, that's crazy, right?
You have to be making an awful lot of money.
Right. It can be done. I'm sure there are people who do it. Yeah. So that's a good perspective, Laurie. Thank you for bringing that to the table, because there's a difference. Plus, in the States, we're not giving any accounting advice here. You can write your amortization off. We don't do that here. So Lois, you want to talk about that a little bit? Because that's a difference between the States and Canada.
Well, in Canada, you can increase your payments at any point to reduce your amortization. Not a lot of people do that, but I've had some clients that have been very aggressive. Remember early in my career, I did a mortgage for a couple, they were self-employed. And of course, obviously a lot of cash business, and they paid their mortgage off in the 5-year term.
Right. So, you know, Laurie, in the States, if I'm not mistaken, you could take your interest from your mortgage and you can use that as a tax deduction.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there are different laws here.
We can't do that here.
We cannot do that. Exactly. So there's a difference, right? I remember when I moved here, I thought, what do you mean I can't do that? Oh, I'm in a different country. That's right. We have different rules, but it's still a house. Laurie, anything else stand out in your mind?
Yeah, no, that was the biggest thing. When she was saying like 5 years so nonchalantly, I thought, wow, is that normal that
No,
everybody?
nobody pays their house off in 5 years. Oh, we wish.
That would be a good commission.
Right.
I would raise the base point. Lois, let's attract the customer, the client who wants to pay the mortgage off in 5 years.
Yeah, right. I have some that think I'll use those prepayment privileges. I'll pay it off, but of course it just doesn't happen.
No, right.
Yeah. Okay, so Lois, so tell me, we all go through life and we all have, all different kinds of things to be grateful for and thankful for. But if you could just think of just one story to share with the world, could you tell us a little story?
Hmm. Oh, probably most recently in my life, I had a blood disease and I needed a stem cell transplant, which I had 5 years ago. And the prognosis wasn't great. When I went in for the consultation in advance, they told me I had about a 50% chance of being alive in 2 or 3 years without the stem cell transplant. So, and even with the stem cell transplant, they weren't guaranteeing me a long life. So they said I'd probably be in the hospital for about 4 to 6 weeks. I've actually got out in 16 days. And I go once, well, I had an intensive checkups for the first year. But since then it's once a year, and my blood counts have all been fine, and I am here. Very happy to be alive. And that, it's scary because at first I was preparing my house and everything in case I wasn't going to be here when afterwards.
Oh, that's a good outcome, Lois, right? Positive thinking.
Yeah, I was just determined to make it then.
What did you do? What did you tell yourself during that time?
Well, it's so scary, but I just I wanted to be here, and I just did whatever I could to prepare myself properly for the procedure and to make sure I was as healthy as possible afterwards to take care of myself. And enjoyed my family as much as I could.
Yeah, that's great advice, right? To be in the moment. Lois, maybe you have a question for Laurie and I. We like to drop the mic on your lap and give you a chance to ask us in case you have something on your mind. Just let us know who the question is geared towards and who you'd like to answer.
Well, I've chatted a fair bit with Rara, but Laurie, what is the nature of your work?
Well, I wear just a few hats. So for over 30 years, I've owned a branding and marketing, web and graphics design company. So that transitioned into, with branding and marketing, I would teach people how to keep in touch with their clients. And so that branched into the send out cards company, because I would teach my clients, you need to send cards to your clients. And
Was the send out company yours, or was just one you were involved with?
just one I was involved with. Yes.
Mhm.
The same one with Catherine where we met on stage. Yeah. And in that company, I became one of the top leaders. So that led to training and speaking engagements, which also led to that in my other company. And I became a certified life business ministry and then later grief coach. So I have that. I have a couple nonprofits. So I have a company called Cops Wives, and my late husband was that. And then, so I also have a company called Wonderful Widowed Women that I created back in 2013 when we lost him in a car wreck. And then I joined a health company last year that was not planned, but that's been going very well also. And I'm the number 3 recruiter in that company. And then my biggest, most important job of late is I watch my little grandson 4 days a
Oh,
week.
great. Mhm. And you do all that other work on top of that.
Yes.
Good for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Lois. So Laurie, this audience who's watching, they don't know you, they don't know me, they don't know Lois. They're watching us for the first time. And sometimes the audience is a little bit curious about things. So I'm going to do something a little different tonight. So maybe for somebody who doesn't know anything about Laurie or myself or you, Lois, what message would you like to give to someone who's watching tonight, meeting you for the first time or meeting all three of us for the first time? What piece of advice? You have 35 years experience in your field. You just told us a very moving story about your determination, and thank goodness you're here to tell us about it. What piece of advice do you want to give to our audience? And we'll go around the room, and it could be business or personal. Just tell us, and I've spoken to you in length and in detail, but I don't know this answer because this is an unrehearsed show. So this is a question that I thought our audience might want some good sound advice from three very experienced people in their life and business.
I would say it's very important to listen, to really make sure you understand what somebody else is saying or what their needs are, or what they want from you.
Awesome. Thank you. Laurie, do you have a piece of sound advice you'd like to give to our new audience or our existing audience?
Sure. Well, my advice goes along with what we teach and train on, but I think it's the most important advice that I've ever come up with in my life. And that's just writing down every night before bed 5 things that specific and in detail that happened that day that you can be grateful and thankful for. And because we all go through those, mountaintops and those valleys all through life. And when you're in those really hard times, it's really hard a lot of times to remember how many things you actually have to be grateful and thankful for. But when you jot them down, then it's easy to go back and lift yourself up by reading all those past things. And it kind of like is going to church and smacking you back into place where you should be. And convicting you on how you need to be. And it's so helpful. And it's just one of the biggest things that I think that I attribute to my success and my happiness in life also. Just because exactly that, everybody's going to have moments and everybody's going to have things, but when you can bring yourself back quickly, then it just makes life so much better.
I agree.
That hits home for
Laurie,
me because just this evening, my daughter, she's 30, and she was having a rather depressive moment, and I told her, I said, no, you're looking at it the wrong way. Think about the things that are good in your life. Stress those rather than being fretting about other things. So I'll have to tell her that, try writing some stuff down every day about what was good.
well, we can send you the link to a place where she can write that. I hear what you're saying, Lois, listening. That's your piece of advice. Laurie, your advice is what we teach and train on, what we base our fundamental core principles about writing in detail what we're grateful for every single day. And I agree with both of those. And I would give advice, a piece of advisory, an advisory piece to our audience. And I would say to communicate, because there's listening, there's speaking, there's reading, there's writing, there's contracts, there's love letters. But what's really important is to have an open dialogue, because I'm not sure if listening means being quiet or if listening means engaging and knowing what the other person is saying. Like Lois said, understanding them. Being quiet doesn't mean we're listening. Writing what we're grateful for doesn't mean that the person we're living with knows how much we love them. So if we could do all of this, listen and repeat back what we heard, write what we're grateful for, and tell the people around us while we're all alive how we feel. Even if sometimes there's a little bit of a rocky road in that moment, the communication will lead to growth, expansion, depth, love, more love. So I think when we put all these three things together, we'll have a very interesting circle, because we'll listen, we'll write, and we'll speak and communicate. I think they're all core values for us in our own ways, and they could be misunderstood. Sometimes speaking, someone says you're not listening. And sometimes when you're not speaking, someone says you're not talking. Right? This could all be misunderstood, but if we explain what we're doing, that in fact could put some light on the subject. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So Lois, before we wrap up tonight, we could talk about what you do and who you are. And you said earlier that you're in your husband's office. And I saw a picture behind you, and I thought it was like a child, right? And I thought, oh, that's a child in your life. And you shared with us that it's a picture of you. And I thought, how touching that this is your husband's office and he has a picture of you when you were a child. Can you share a little bit of a story about
No,
that
I
with us
wasn't a
before we
child. I
wrap
was
up?
probably about 21 or 22 when that picture was taken.
You were young.
Younger than I am now, for sure. Yes.
And why
But he
that
just-
picture?
He went through an old photo album that I had, and he liked that one, so he asked if he could put it up. And of course, he likes pictures of me when I was younger.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful to see that. It's really nice. It's heartwarming. It tells us that you're sitting in a room surrounded by love.
Mhm.
That's nice to know. Lois, we're going to give our audience a way to connect with you, but hang out with us because Laurie and I are going to talk a little bit about, Laurie, we have somebody watching tonight, and I was speaking with someone earlier who's going to be our guest, and I was explaining that it's a 1-year wait to be on our show. Can we talk a little bit about, we're blessed. What is it like to be on our show? And we talk about a link to writing in a journal. You want to shed some light on those topics?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, it's actually almost a 1.5 year wait, I believe now, to be on our show. But if you want to be like Lois and you want to be featured on our show, go to our site at facebook.com/gratitude girls. Watch some of our past shows there. You can also watch the shows at gratitudegirls.com. And then, click the message link and send us a message there. Tell us what your gratitude story is and why you want to be featured on our show. Also, make sure to leave us your contact information so that way we know how to get back in touch with you. And if you did hear us talk about the Gratitude Girls journal of writing the 5 things down, and so you can go to Amazon. You can also get it from us on our gratitudegirls.com site, but the easiest, of course, fastest place is just go to Amazon and type in either Laurie Delk or Catherine Asaro along with Gratitude Girls Journal, and you will find our journal, and it's a 100-day challenge. So what we tell you is get it and take our 100-day challenge and write in it every night 5 things that you are grateful and thankful for that day, specific and in detail, that happened. We're all always thankful for our house and our spouse and our cars and our kids. But these are things that happened that day, that's specific and in detail. And if you do that for 100 days, we guarantee you, money back guaranteed, that your life will be better.
Yes, thank you. Laurie, until you've done it, you don't one can't understand the power of 100 days of doing something that is cathartic, removing the worry. You talked about what you said earlier. removing the worry and the stress, and writing has a way of doing that. So there are many ways to look at things. And when you write what's on your mind and what you're grateful for, it actually relieves the stress that might be behind some of the actions that happen during the day, because you're grateful for, and then it just releases it. There's a very therapeutic action to writing our gratitude. I'm so grateful that we met on stage, and who knew that we would have our retreat behind us, our groups, our clients, our coaching calls, our book, and guests like Lois to share with us stories, your incredible story, Lois, of your will and your desire and the power of the mind. I'm so happy that you're here to share that with us. And I'm so glad that we sat at Verity and we had the conversation about you being a guest on the show. You were at Fran Law's lunch, and we were at Verity. So look at how these friendships really develop into many things. Lois and I are members of a women's organization called Cowie. So I'd like to give a shout out to Cowie for bringing us together, and to Verity for giving us a place to celebrate Fran Law's birthday. So we just keep moving things around, and to Gratitude Girls for giving us the opportunity to hear your story, Lois. So we hope to see you next time that we are in Toronto together, and we'll make sure that we set a date when you're in town so Laurie and I can get in touch with you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me here this evening. This is really good.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Hang out with us. Thank you so much. So Laurie, to you and to our audience, big hearts, and thank you, and join us next month. I guess, Laurie, you want to give us the dates and the times?
Yes, it's the fourth Tuesday night of every month at 8:30 Eastern, 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central, 7:30 Mountain, and 6:30 Pacific. See you next time, everyone. Good night.
Ciao. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.